It's good morning to the Sports Fan Radio. That's racing viewers, and a welcome return to the Gelding. He's back from his overseas jaunt. Well done, Gelding. I hope you
Uh,
had a great time while you're away.
Good morning, Professor. Good morning, listeners. Yes, had a lovely little 8 days in Phuket. So good to get back. And Professor still showed an interest in the tips. And let me say what a hard day it was for you last week.
Goodness gracious. Gelding, the track went from a good 4 to a heavy 9 in about an hour and a half.
Yep. As I said to you, they're the days that you've just got to, as I said to you, I don't like that type of meeting anyway. But when you're trying to do your tips at 10 o'clock in the morning and the track's a good 4, and by the time the bets come around, the track's a heavy 8 and deteriorating all day, it's just impossible. Form goes out the door. New tactics come into it. Scratchings are made, which affects the pace of the races and all that. So all in all, Professor, a very impossible day for you. They're the days that you want to do the updates, 5 minutes before the race, because half the time you don't know whether it's going to be pelting down or whatever. So you did well, Professor. You did well. And I deserted you on a day like that.
Well, I thought I did reasonably well, Gelding, but we did meet up with David from Morty Alec on Wednesday night, and he
And Thursday morning.
and well, you did, not me. But he seemed to be a bit disappointed in how we went. I couldn't believe it.
I was surprised that he obviously didn't like your winner, Professor, and the one. And as I was saying from the weeks before, he said, we've been going reasonably well, and he was on board them. And then anyway.
Well, at least we had a reason for the tips, perhaps not saluting Gelding. Like it's very rare that the track is downgraded from a 4 to a 9.
When you do the form on a good 4, when you get a heavy track. But, well, he's an interesting character, is our David from Morty Alley.
Well, but as we say, Gelding, that's racing.
That's racing. That's right, Professor.
All right, Gelding. Well, it's Caulfield today, a 10 race card, and the track is a good 4. The first's at 12:15, the last's at 5:40. Now, Gelding, there's no real feature race. 3 races valued at $150,000. 2 of them not in the quadrella. What's going on? How are 2 of the races, race 1 and race 2, the most expensive races on the card?
Professor, why do you ask me to keep on explaining for the Melbourne Racing Club? You know my opinion of the Melbourne Racing Club.
Yes, I do.
Of which I am a member of and have been for a long period of time. They just chop and change things on a whim. They just forget about all this tradition. As you said, normally the quaddie leagues are the best races of the program, and when it was an eight race card, it used to be 5 and 7 were the 2 main races, the first leg of the quaddie and the third leg of the quaddie. Now we've got 10 race programs. It's benchmark racing, as you say, nothing outstanding. You've got a benchmark 100 as the second race. And then in the quaddie leagues, you have a benchmark 70, a benchmark 70, a 3-year-old and up race, and a benchmark 84. Now, benchmarking was brought in to grade the horses. So you'd imagine the better horses are going to be in the higher grade of race. Common sense would tell you, Professor, it becomes the main race of the day, doesn't it? The highest rated race.
It does, Gelding, but not today.
You included into the quadrella. I know there's lesser numbers in there with 7, but I don't know.
Well, that's a good segue, Gelding, because I was going to put this one to you too. You can tell I've got a bee in my bonnet this morning.
Yeah.
Race 2 and 3, not enough starters to have 3 dividends for placings. why are we running a 10 race card when we can't fill races 2 and 3?
Exactly, Professor.
Question without notice, Gelding.
Why are we racing them? Clubs only think of one thing. Their KPI is turnover and how much money they can get back from the TAB, Professor. That is the reason for the increase in the race programs and for the extra race. No other reason past that. They said betting has dropped off since COVID. During the COVID period, a lot more people were betting on their phone accounts and their turnover did drop after it. So the Racing Victoria and clubs have decided to add another race, a 10 race program, Professor. Sports Fan San would have been used to an 8 race program.
That's right, Gelding.
Traditional type of things. Now we have 10, and all it is to do is just turnover, Professor, and nothing else. But that may be it. And remember, we come off another 10 race program at Caulfield on Thursday twilight.
Yes.
So, these same horses, you've had 20 races. You're going to have 20 races in Caulfield in the space of 2 days, Professor. Now, what does that tell you?
Yeah, it tells me a lot, Gelding.
You've got to make, and that's why Hong Kong racing is so successful, is they have 2 race meetings a week. They have 8 or 9 races on each program. They had 10 on International Day, and they have select fields and people. That's what they can race. So they have better quality racing, and that's what people want.
So Gelding,
it's just a better product.
Let me pose this to you. I had several communications from Melbourne Racing Club over the last 2 weeks. Not one of those communications mentioned that there was Thursday racing or today's Saturday meeting. It was telling me about all sorts of other stuff with the track, but not highlighting that they're actually racing there. And why don't you come along?
Why wouldn't you mention your core business, Professor?
Yeah, well, Gelding, what's the marketing department doing? Like, you don't hear from them about, hey, get along to the racing, come along. How do they know that I might not change my mind about what I'm doing if I look at it and go, oh, okay, well, that's not going to be a hugely attended event. It might be a good one to go along to and have a good day.
Yep. And I'm with you, Professor. But is there too much racing? You look at Thursday, right?
Yep.
We were there. We had an interest there. Wednesday, Mornington meeting was a twilight meeting, as we said there. Then on Thursday, you had 2 meetings, one being a twilight meeting at Caulfield. Yesterday, you had 3 meetings in Victoria. 2 night meetings, Moonee Valley and Cranbourne against one another, plus a meeting during the day. So leading up to today's races at Caulfield, in the last 3 days, there's 6 meetings. You've had a week's worth of meetings in 3 days, Professor.
Yeah. Which probably says something about why we've got the quality of horse we've got today, Gelding, because there's slim pickings in. Don't recognise too many of the names of these horses, and most of them are country horses at best.
Well, Professor, yes, it's good, and some of the horses have won good money, and good luck to them. But with a product, you've got to have the Saturday Metropolitan meeting has to be the main meeting of the week, doesn't it? And
yes.
You've got to make it a bit above for the better people. If you're racing for more prize money on a Saturday in the city, let's have less racing, get a better quality of horse there, make it more competitive, and let's see how we go. We're picking horses today as the best bet, which has had 1 run for 1 win, in a maiden. But I think it's got a bit of upside. But, normally they would have 2 or 3 runs before they get into a city type of race, because it's harder to qualify because there's better performed horses.
Exactly, Gelding. All right. Well, enough griping from you and I.
Yep, off the soapbox.
Yeah. What are your two best bets for today's Caulfield race meeting, Gelding?
Professor, I'm looking at the form today. Caulfield, the track, a good 4. Rails out 10 metres, the same as it was on Thursday. So, it gives a bet. So, normally, it should be a good track, Professor. The rain that they got last week would certainly have helped it, and they hopefully haven't had to put too much water on it. But I was looking this time of year, Professor, I like to back horses that have winning form and that are currently in winning form. So the two I've gone for are race 5, number 1, Is It Me, trained by Daniel Bowman, won last start at Cranbourne, and this was the Cranbourne meeting that was a metro meeting. So I look at it as a class meeting. It won quite well. Time run beautifully. Carried 59 kilos with Gordy Charles aboard, Professor. It goes up in weight to 61.5. So Daniel Bowman has used Leon Gaudry's claim of 2 to bring it down to 59.5, Professor. So basically carrying the same weight. Hopefully she can time the run again. This horse has had 8 starts for 3 wins and 3 seconds, Professor. So, we're talking good percentage win rate and also a good of 37.5% and a place rate of 75%, Professor. Our guides, or as we like to have filters, we're looking for horses with over a third winning strike rate and a 50% place rate, Professor. So seems to tick a few boxes for me. That's race 5, number 1, Is It Me. Professor, I'll then go race 7, number 3, Jambalara. A 3-year-old gelding trained by Godolphin, James Cumming, the Blue Army. As listeners will know, we certainly do have a liking for these type of horses from the Blue Army, to be ridden by Jamie Carr, who hopefully now, with everything behind her, all her appeals being dealt with.
Difficulties.
Yes, that's a nice way of putting it, Professor. Hopefully they're all behind her and she can come out and celebrate on Jambala, which won its only start at Moonee Valley. Look, Professor, it won by a length and a half, but having a look at the replay, this horse was 3-4 lengths in front, and Jamie Carr just sat up on it and let it ease to the line. So, look, it was a maiden at Moonee Valley. It steps up today to a benchmark 70, Professor, but the way it won, the way Jamie Carr rode it, look, I think it's a pretty good thing. And I've gone race 7, number 3. So my two, Professor, race 5, number 1, into race 7, number 3. And you like?
Yeah, Gelding. I'm going in race 4, simply the best handicap, 1400 metre race for 3-year-old and above, benchmark 78 for fillies and mares. Horse number 6, Gelding, rumbled again, coming out of barrier 9, had 23 starts for 5 wins and 8 placings, a little bit under the filter that we like for wins at 22%, Gelding, but ticks the 57% place box. Gelding, it's the highest rated horse in the field, and it ran third beaten half a length last start at Cranbourne 2, Is It Me, which is your selection in race 5. So my theory is, Gelding, a high rated horse that's good enough to win race 5 this horse should be good enough to win race 4. So I'm following your form line there, Gelding. Carleen Heffel's in the saddle, the apprentice. She's claiming 1.5, so it's only going to be running around with 56 kilos. So I like that. She's in career form at the moment, Gelding. 10% win rate, but she's up to 12% over the last 50. And a trainer we mentioned very, very rarely, if at all, Gelding, Michael Trotter from Cranbourne, only has 9 horses, and this is the best performed of the 9.
Yes. son of Pat Trotter,
Pat
the
Trotter.
ex-jockey,
Yes.
things like that. 2 questions there for you, Professor, without notice. I do notice that, of course, this race is a benchmark 78, which is a higher grade than the race 5, which is a benchmark 70. So the
Yes.
horse is stepping up in grade
Yes.
from Is It Me? And the name of the race, Professor?
Simply the
Patocchi.
best.
Patocchi, simply the best.
Yes.
Isn't Patocchi's renowned for hams?
Yes, Gelding.
And isn't simply the best the NRL?
Yes.
Giraffes territory?
Yes, they've apportioned or acquired that name to use. I did query it when I looked at it. It sounded a bit silly, but anyway, look.
Anyway,
but that's marketing.
You can't go
Gelding.
past the Patocchi ham at this time of year, Professor.
Oh no, it's a good time to be out advertising your product, Gelding.
And we would like some, maybe some gratitude for mentioning them on the show. Do you think?
It probably won't happen, Gelding.
It probably won't happen, but a nice ham would be good for Christmas, Professor.
That's right. Maybe next year, Gelding.
Maybe. Can you look into the sponsorship?
I will, Gelding. I will look into it. Now, rumbled again, $6.50 and $2. So great odds there for each way punters, Gelding.
Oh, a good bet, a good each way bet, Professor.
All right, and I'm going in the last, Gelding, the Katnar Jewelers Handicap 1,200 metre race for 3-year-olds and above, a benchmark 84. In this race, Gelding, I like horse number 8, Baldino, coming out of barrier 7. 19 starts for 5 wins and 6 placings, so a 26% win rate, a 58% place rate. It's in a weaker class, Gelding. It won an open class race at Ararat in its last start over 1,300 metres. It's won 3 out of its last 4, Gelding, so I like winning form, and we do like that winning form, especially into today's races. Dylan McGonigal, the former apprentice from Ireland, Gelding. He's out.
Yes.
He's out here, got a combination going with Mar Eustace to ride their horses. 220 winners in 5 years back in Great Britain, Gelding.
I think the connection, of course, is David Eustace's brother and father of trainers over in England, Professor. So there's a bit of synergy between the two stables. A couple of horses have come over from England to the Mar Eustace stable, and there was even some talk of them having that worldwide stable, combining the stables. So Mar Eustace could send Australian horses over to England to race, Professor. So, which would be fantastic and a world first. So it's something to look forward to. But yeah, this apprentice has come over and getting some fine rides from the leading stable in Australia.
Well, and they're in hot form at the moment, Gelding. Career win rate of 17%, Mar Eustace. Over the last 50, 24%. So we'll take that any day of the week.
Oh, exactly, Professor. You don't go broke backing Mar Eustace horses.
No, you don't. So my 2, Gelding, race 4, horse 6, rumbled again. Race 10, horse 8, Baldino. Now, the Professor's parlay, Gelding.
Ouch.
The Dolphins leading by 14, 2 touchdowns with 2 minutes to go and get beaten.
Yep.
Like the money was almost in the bank. We had to take the money back out of the bank, Gelding.
I thought we were getting another Shaw and Smith out of that result, Professor.
Yes, Gelding, but it wasn't to be. The opposition scored 15 points, a touchdown plus a 2-point conversion, giving them 8, and then a touchdown and the point after for 7. 15 points to win by 1. They only had 2 minutes to do it, Gelding. What were the Miami Dolphins thinking?
Well, a lot of them had their heads well and truly buried when they walk out. And to put it into perspective, Professor, any side that gets 2 touchdowns or 14 points in a half of American football, that is a very good half.
Yes.
To do it in the last 2 minutes is unheard of. You might get in the last 2 minutes of play, you may see some sides be 2 or 3 points down and they get a field goal to 3 points to win the game, or they score 1 touchdown, Professor, but you don't give up 2 touchdowns in the last 2 minutes, do you?
No, you don't, Gelding.
You just
it's a head scratcher. So,
well,
regrettably,
Professor, can you think of it? Maybe one for Dan Butley, in the new year and that.
yes.
Can you remember it ever happening before?
Not to that extent, Gelding. So, yes. So, defeat was snatched out of the jaws of victory on this occasion.
Oh, we were singing the theme song.
We were, Gelding. All right. Let's look at today. So the agreed bet of the day between you and I, Gelding, is race 7, horse number 3, Jamie Carr and the Blue Army Jambalaya.
Beautiful.
Into the San Francisco 49ers to beat the Arizona Cardinals. San Francisco currently number 1 in the NFC. They've won 10 from 13, Gelding. They've got the best defence in the NFL. They've only allowed 205 points in 13 games, or 15.7 points per game. They score at 29.2 points per game, Gelding. So that's nearly 2 touchdowns difference between the for and against. So they've got a very good offense as well. Arizona ranked 15th in the NFC, only won 3 from 10. They only score 17.6 points per game on average, Gelding. So the line's 12.5, and you can understand why it is. They're showing $1.13 at the moment, and I think that's being generous. I thought they'd be down to about $1.08, $1.05.
That's sensational. It's Cardinals having a year to forget, Professor. As you just said, the 49ers only allowing 15 points a game. That's what the Dolphins gave up in 2 minutes last week.
Gelding.
And this is a side that's, the whole game they only let that in. So that just rubs more salt into the wound, Professor.
Yes, Gelding. Well, hopefully we'll have a win today, and that'll get rid of that salt out of the wound. And let's parlay that into the home team, Manchester City in the Premier League, Gelding. Anything to say?
The EPL, nothing to say, Professor. No, look, I do worry about the EPL and the soccer, just mildly, but you've been in pretty good form with it at the moment, so I can't say anything.
Until you will.
I will hold my...
You hold fire at the moment. Breath. All right. So Manchester City, the home team to beat Crystal Palace. City, 4th in the Premier League at the moment. They've got a plus 20 goal difference, was pretty healthy over 16 games. They've won 10. They've got a 62.5% win rate, Gelding. If our horses did that, we'd be exceptionally happy, wouldn't we?
We certainly would, Professor.
All right. And Crystal Palace, 15th in the Premier League, a minus 8 goal difference. They've only won 25% of their games, Gelding. For Crystal Palace to win, the bookies think it's a $15 shot. Even to get a draw, it's $7.50. So not many people think that Crystal Palace are going to win or draw, including the bookies. $1.16, Gelding, they're showing at home, which I think's still pretty good odds.
I like it, Professor. I like it.
All right. So the win parlay showing 5-2, Gelding. The place parlay showing 3-2. Well, so in a big day of racing, hopefully the punters out there have got something that they'll enjoy and can take some money home tonight when it's all over. No sports fan, Gelding, tomorrow. We're done for the year. We won't be back until, there's thoughts of maybe an outside broadcast to kick off the year next year in the first week in February.
Was discussed, Professor, wasn't it?
Yes, I've got to get some permissions from a local radio station that you and I know very well, but hopefully that will be attended to, and we might be doing an outside broadcast from somewhere in Fitzroy.
Yes, Professor. And the judge is very keen to discuss his football knowledge, which he was partaking with us on Wednesday night.
Yeah, there's one thing I'll say about that, Gelding. If you're picking a team that doesn't have Brownlow medalists in it, how do you actually have selected 2 Brownlow medalists in the non-Brownlow medalist side? That's an interesting conversation it was, Gelding.
It was interesting. It was. Maybe he thought they could just sneak through, Professor.
Yeah, maybe. See, it took you and I to run our eye over the list, Gelding, and query him about the 2.
Isn't it just like, and I say this in the most respectful way, in that profession, they say something sometimes that...
With the greatest of respect.
With the greatest of respect, it said that sometimes someone will say something, and hopefully by saying it, they'll just let it pass through, and therefore it's true.
Not with us, Gelding.
No, it was challenged, so very good.
All right, Gelding. Well, until next Saturday, and that's racing. It's good luck.